If you have an uneven chest and one side of your chest seems like it's smaller or not as well developed as the other side, this video is for you, and the cause of it may surprise you. It's easy to think initially that, oh, this muscle just isn't as developed as the other because it's weaker and it's smaller. But what if I told you that's just a symptom of the underlying cause? You see, our muscles, our pecs in particular, can only be leveraged as well as our rib cage allows them to be. So if I have a rib cage that's in an asymmetrical position, meaning that, let's say, one side of our rib cage is more depressed and down relative to the other side, which is more opened up and higher, then that is going to give me less leverage to develop the depressed side, the down side. So what we would say is that these ribs on the side that's smaller tend to be in a more internally rotated position, or a deflated position of your chest on that side. Because when we exhale, the rib cage internally rotates. The other side is typically in more of an externally rotated position, more of an inhaled position, if you will. It's also important to consider that when one side of the rib cage is down, the sternum bone right here, the breastbone, is being pulled over to that side. So it's likely that the more depressed side, you also have a sternum that's turned towards that side. A key component of getting muscles to grow and develop is the ability for a muscle to be loaded in a stretched position and then move into a contracted position. If you cannot get enough stretch on one side of your rib cage, or if you're turned to one side within your sternum, then that is going to limit your pec's ability to get that stretch and optimally contract. So you could beat your head against the wall trying to get your muscle to grow more and more, and you could do single arm presses and single arm pec work and all this good stuff. It might not matter relative to improving the position of your rib cage and getting the ability for you to get your sternum more even and symmetrical, which will help this pec be leveraged better in the future. One more thing that's important to consider here is if we have a more deflated rib cage on one side and more of an open rib cage on the other, what that means is that this rib cage is likely pushed more forward, which means the back side of the rib cage on that side is likely more tight relative to the other, because we have tighter muscles on the backside pushing us forward, and not as much tightness on the backside of this because these ribs are being pushed back relative to the other side. So let's say, for example, that my right side was the one that had the smaller pec and it's down on that side. Well, what I would want to do is inflate my right chest wall and create a better ability to expand that space in the front. But on the back left side, I also want to improve the ability for these ribs to be pushed back. So that way we can get that rib cage into overall more of a symmetrical position. There are two tests I want you to take. Shoulder internal rotation, because this is telling me how well you can get air into that chest wall. The more depressed it is, the worse your internal rotation is going to be. The other thing I want you to try is shoulder external rotation. Now you may want to take this off of a table because you want to see how far back that arm can go. If I'm turned to one side, most of the time what you're going to see, with few exceptions, is that, let's say I'm turned to the right side again, I'm gonna have better internal rotation on this side, better external rotation on the side I'm turned towards, like this. So therefore, I would have more limited shoulder internal rotation on this side and more limited shoulder external rotation on this side. Now, those are the tests that should objectively improve as you do these following exercises. Now, depending on you as an individual, for some people, 10-degree improvement is very meaningful. Other people, a 30-degree improvement is more meaningful. It just depends on how tight you are. But the more tight you are to start, the less likely you're going to see a huge jump in your range of motion, but you should notice that it feels easier. That's how you know you're on the right track. Here's the first exercise, which is designed to really open up the chest wall on the depressed side. So we're gonna get in this position where we have a 90-degree bend at both our knees and our hips, and we have this elbow of the down side directly stacked underneath that shoulder right there. So it's really important that we get into a palms up position here. But if you feel any wrist or shoulder pain doing that, you could go more neutral, as long as you're feeling this outer bone in your wrist right here in contact with the floor. So to initiate this, Trevor's going to push through the ground. He's going to go up, and he's going to feel probably a little bit turned towards the left side, the downside left side there. So as he breathes in through his nose, And out through his mouth, he's going to feel his left side abs engage more because they're working to hold him up here. But as he inhales, he's going to feel his right side open up a little bit. And he's just going to maintain that position as he goes through sets of breaths here. The progression here would be to add an overhead reach. So as Trevor goes up into the side plank position, he's going to reach directly overhead, but not so far back behind him to where his ribs flare and extend. He wants to be, if anything, just a tiny bit in front of his head. And he just wants to let that arm hang out and chill. He doesn't want to be tensing to reach it overhead. You can let it just kind of relax. And now as you breathe in, you should feel some expansion alongside this right side even more. The second exercise is going to be important for pushing the ribs back on that side. Here it is. So to set up for this, what we're going to do is get in a quadruped position, meaning we have our knees underneath our hips and our hands directly underneath our shoulders. So what we're going to do here is get a little bit of a book underneath the side where we want to push the ribs back on. So we're trying to get this back left side to open up. The book is underneath the left hand here. And what we're going to do is maintain a soft bend in the elbows, but reach through the floor and push our ribs back a lot. Imagine there's a hand on your back and you're really reaching those back ribs towards the ceiling there. There's gonna be a lot of flexion in your back, and that's good. You should also have a slight tuck of the hips right here. Your weight should be spread 50% between your hands and your knees. And now you should feel a tiny bit of a stretch in your upper back. We're gonna maximize that more with the breath now. So big, long exhale through the mouth, side out. That full exhale is gonna get you to feel your side abs on both sides. And what you're gonna do is maintain a little bit of that side ab tension at the end of the exhale. The exhale should be about 5 to 10 seconds. And then inhale through your nose, maintaining that slight ab tension. You're gonna feel this area expand back here where the book is. On that side should expand more. You should feel more of a stretch back there. A general rule would be a nice, soft, long exhale. So we're gonna close all this down with that full exhale, which is gonna force air to go back into that upper back. So general rule is soft, long exhale, gentle, silent inhale. And that's going to allow you to really open up this space back here and use your diaphragm well. The other thing to look out for is don't shrug into your ears. Keep your shoulders out of your ears. Keep a soft bend in the elbows. Now, it's important to consider what's happening at the rib cage, but also you may have influences at the pelvis. For example, because everything is so interconnected within the body, if I have a more forward pelvis on one side, that's going to push my rib cage forward in all likelihood, in most cases on that side. You could work on your rib cage all day long, but if you're not addressing what's happening at your pelvis as it relates to that, you may be limited in your ability to see successful outcomes. So if you want to see exercises in a program that's designed to address a lot of these issues and common postural and movement limitations, check out my beginner body restoration program. I will link it down below in the description. And finally, here's an exercise that combines both of those things together. So you'll be getting better expansion on the front side of the depressed side and better expansion on the back side of the side that needs to be pushed back. Once we have an appropriate seat height where we have a 90-degree bend at both our knees and our hips, we want to roll back our pelvis until we feel both of our sit bones, or those bony protrusions in each butt cheek, or your ischial tuberosities. And then place your hand on your left side right there, those left low ribs, Trevor, and then I want you to exhale and side bend to the left. Good. That should engage those left outer abs, and you should also feel your left sit bone more than your right, but still keep your right one on that bench or chair, whatever you're using. And then, Trevor, I'll have you extend your right arm off to the side so he's got a little bit of a gap right here in between his humerus and also his trunk, and that should engage the muscles on his tricep, back of the arm, and then the lower right shoulder blade, which is his low trap. He's going to hold that position as he breathes in through his nose, out through his mouth. Upon exhaling more through the mouth, gentle exhale, he's going to feel those side abs engage even more. I want you to hold that compression in your side abs, Trevor, as you inhale through your nose, and that should give you some expansion in the chest on the lateral side right here and also right here on the right side. The most common mistake we see on this activity is overly side bending to the left to the point where the right side comes up, and then they lose their left sit bone as well. So make sure it is a side bend for sure, but it's not so much to where you are going to lose your left sit bone or your right one, but you should still be more on your left. The other thing is that people will just end up extending through their back as they press that band away from them. So make sure that your ribs are staying down, and if you're feeling your sit bones, you're probably in a really good position. I'd recommend doing these for about 2 to 3 sets of 8 full quality breath cycles. The breathing is of the utmost importance here, guys. If you're not breathing through this properly, you're not going to be getting the expansion you're looking for.